Okay, well, we're here for our third podcast, and I'm super excited about this one. Steve Rich is a good friend of mine. We met through business, and it's been a awesome journey. I've watched him grow his business over the last few years, and he's watched me grow mine as well, and assisted in helping grow mine, which he's been a great friend and great resource that way. So, we're going to start with talking about your business, and then this is actually a treat. We'll probably make this a second episode, but he's also a marketing expert. So we're going to talk to him about some of his thoughts and ideas with marketing that I think will be really powerful. So why don't you just start by telling us your business, what the basics are of what you do and what you provide.
Yeah, no, thanks. Thanks for being here. It's awesome. I mean, you're the go-to guy when I talk about how to get things sells out there, or need somebody that needs to figure out how to sell something that's a little bit different or a little bit off. And so I appreciate being a part of what you've got going too. So I got started kind of in marketing. I grew up like I think a lot of people do. I grew up early working. I started working in grocery stores when I was 14 years old. Today, none of that would be legal, but driving forklifts and everything back at that age, I would go in every morning at 4 a.m. and receive trucks before school. And
That's awesome.
anyway, by the time I was a senior in high school, I was a store manager, and it was a little bit funny because I was a teenager still, and
Yeah.
so up on the wall they'd have the managers' pictures, and most of these guys were married men or women or older, and there's my cheesy little, you know, uh, 17, 18-year-old face up there as manager. But it was really cool because it taught me a lot about business, and it was an independent grocer, so it taught me, okay, everything you do has got to be designed to have a little bit of marketing behind it, right? A little bit of letting people know what you offer, letting people know, the good things, the things you provide, as well as how to pull people in, how to meet their needs. And it was a little bit open where I didn't have to follow a format. If I was a chain store, it probably had just rules all the way down. Here I had a little bit of openness, which gave you the opportunity to try new things.
Because it was a like small grocer. Is
Yeah,
that why?
yeah, small local grocer. I think they had 4 or 5 stores at the time, but local grocer, and yeah, independent, and and so the owners would kind of go to you and say, well, how can we get more business? And they're asking a 14, 15, 16, 17-year old who's there this, and which I give them a lot of credit for, because a lot of times people wouldn't listen to them, but they would listen, and then they would tell you which parts you can implement, right? Because I'm sure there was some crazy ideas that they didn't want implemented. But anyway, it was a great experience, and so I did that for a while, even up till uh, when I went to college. People had heard about different things I'd accomplish in growing store sales. So I had several different other grocery stores asking me to while I was going to college to come and help them, or several of them wanted me to quit college and run their store for them. And so I played around with that, and it took me a little bit longer getting through school because I caved a few times and took a semester off, and you know worked in a store to get it up to par, up to the sales up to where they needed to be. And then after I graduated from that, I decided to go to work for a broker, but it happened to be a food broker, so I never got out of the food business that way. But my job was to call on these national chains, and I worked for people like Gatorade or Vlasic Pickles, or you name all these different products, and I was in charge of their marketing for our region, for our area. So any of the large grocery chains, I would call on them and work out, okay, how we can sell more product. And I learned a lot that way, and it was great. It was a different world at the time than it is today by far. It was from everything to back then. People could smoke in the buildings. I still remember we would have meetings all day Friday, and by maybe 10:30 or 11 a.m. there was just so much smoke because most people smoked in there, and it was just a whole different atmosphere, and the way they treated things and how they pitched things and how they marketed things. But my main client that they had signed me to was Associated Food Stores, and Associated Food Stores is a couple $1 billion a year company that had roughly around 650 stores in 8 states, and my job was to work closely with them. And after working with them fairly closely for 6, 8 months as a broker, they came to me and asked me to consider coming to work for them, and which I was honored. They didn't do that much. They always hired from within, and so I was pretty young, and I decided to make that change. And I moved over and started working with them. And the first thing they did is they gave me some of these little tiny mom and pops that were like gas station grocery stores. In there was about 70 of them, and throughout southern Utah, Idaho, Colorado. And they said, okay, here's your job, Steve. You got to lift their sales, you got to lift their profits, and they kind of in a very low voice, and they don't have any money, and go get them, and you'll be judged from the results, and which was it was honestly a great opportunity, and I was young enough in my mind that I wasn't stuck in any routine or any way of doing things, and so I just went for it. And my history of growing up working for independents and that was, okay, you figured out a way to get it done no matter what. And so we figured out a lot of no-cost, low-cost types of marketing. We did a lot of themes. We did events. And, sometimes if it was a big city thing, it wouldn't have worked as well. But in a small town, when you have, a 50s sell and you have an Elvis lookalike contest and you have hula hoop contests and things like that, half the town come out and they stay all day, right?
Yeah.
And they make it, and it makes it fun, and people remember it. And I just really saw that making that emotional connection was more important than having little facts of, hey, we'll save you 2 cents here or whatever. And so as we did these with these stores, they really got behind it, and they saw such great growth right off the bat. And that first year I was there working with them was a down year for everybody in the economy. It was the big stores were just trying their hardest to try to break even with prior year, and it was a rough year financially, except for these little independents. Because of the new efforts we'd made, all their business had grown. We had an average increase of about 32%, and that's an average. So there's some that was way up further than that, and so they finished the year with that. And so it was kind of neat to see these smaller guys, really, really taking off. And they were they were happy with what had come. They, really enjoyed the process. Word got out within Associated to the bigger stores because they kind of grouped them in size. And so the big stores were like, wait a minute, who's this guy and how's he helping these guys make that kind of money? And first of all, why isn't he working with us,
Yeah.
And so it's kind of a neat feeling to have, because I started having the different size groups were kind of battling or positioning to try to see if they could get me to be their marketing coordinator or their marketing director. And at the time, we had some changes. Associated Food Stores, although it had been around 60 years at that time, 60, 65, it had gone through, we were on the third CEO is all in that amount of time.
Wow.
And the CEO had only been CEO for a few years. And he came down and spoke to me and said, hey, I'm shaking things up. And he gave me a bunch of compliments about liked the way I do things. He says, but you're my new vice president of marketing. And I was like 23, and I was like scared to death. We were a $2.5 billion company, and with thousands of employees. And all of a sudden, he'd made me jump over several of my supervisors to be a vice president. And so I really had to think and dig deep and say, okay, how can I win at this? How can I make these stores money with, in my estimation at the time, limited knowledge? But really, it was more attitude and the idea of, hey, let's figure it out, that got me past that, got me through that, and helped me go. Because what happens is when you're dealing with that many independent business owners, you have almost that many different opinions on how you should do things, but you got people that hey, my way works, or my way works, and you're having to accommodate more than one of those. You have to figure out, okay, what's the right path to go down. And with these guys, if it was a chain store, I could have just said, okay, here's the way we're going, and away we go, and here's the law, everybody jumps in line. But obviously with independents, they got to say so. They own their own little store, whether or not they have training or not. And so anything move I had to make, I had to research it, and then I had to basically sell it or present it to them and say, here's what we're going to do, and here's why. Here's what we plan to get out of it. Now, if I was right, it was because they were good implementers. If I was wrong, it would cost me my job, right?
Yeah.
Hey, he's a terrible marketer. Get him out of here. And luckily, I was right way more often than ever wrong. And so we were able to really grow that company. And it was so neat to see how over the years how we kept doing things that were building that company. And our CEO was just a great man, and he was doing things on the financial level where let our company grow. At the time when I first started working with them, I felt like we were 10 years behind all of our competition. I really did. I felt like we were dragging. We were the last ones to get the new locations. We were the last ones to try anything new, and real quick over time, it took us several years there, but pretty soon we were the leaders. We were the ones in the market that people were looking at as, okay, what's the new innovative part? Any new property came open, we were the first ones that got called by any kind of developer because they knew that we had programs and people in place to make things work. And it was just so neat to see that growth and to be a part of that, and just experience when an independent guy has got everything into it, hell, his family's labor, his family's money, and working hard, and then to see them come out and succeed was incredible.
Yeah.
And I was able to help one individual in particular. He started out with a medium to small store and worked closely with him, and I saw him as I was working with him over time. He got to the point where we built him a new store, and it was a full blown big store. And he did so well that we were able to build him another one, right? And then we were able to buy an existing store and change it for him, and and working through those times with him, and we also had programs to teach his kids how to lead, so that when they was their time to take over, they were ready to go. This particular individual ended up getting ALS and came to me. I was one of the first ones he told that he had it, and he actually tried to give me a whole bunch of money and said, "Steve, you made me a millionaire, which taking care of my family now that I know that I'm not going to be here much longer." And obviously I didn't take his money because that was my job and that's what I loved doing. But it was so neat to see that as he did pass away within like 8 months of that, his kids were right ready to go to step up. They were trained, they were leaders. It wasn't just dad gave me the business, now what do I do with it? Mess. They had disciplines in place, and so that organization continues to grow today because of the people in place. Those are some of the best parts about doing it. One of the things that I really loved is learning about being a number two, and you've heard me talk about that many times. Is our CEO was he got to be very well known because as our company was growing and taking, a lot of people knew who he was, way more than anybody knew who I was. But besides that, I still thought, as I'm a number two, if I'm his executive vice president, when we'd go meet with Procter & Gamble, we'd go meet with Kraft Foods, I'd always try to go in 10 to 15 minutes before our CEO did. And I'd always, he and I had a great relationship. We'd just joke back and forth. But when he wasn't there joking with me, when I went in ahead of him, I would be extra respectful. I'd always, hey, can we make sure that we got a pad of paper for Mr. Parkinson? Can we get water? Okay, he'll be in here soon. And then I'd try to tell a story about something he accomplished, with something about how we were able to work with the feds and create a Class C stock, which no co-op independent had been able to do before. Some of the other big financial moves that he was able to make, how we were able to buy out some competitors. Anyway, I tell these stories. So as he walked into the room, even though he was known way better than me, because I was telling these stories and building up respectful, he was a hero almost as he walked in. They might have never even heard of him before, but he walked in as this hero, and so he'd get more respect, he'd get more attention, and when you get more attention from Procter and Gamble or Kraft, that means more money coming to our market, more events, more programs, more marketing. And it was neat to see that, and I really was able to see him, see my role as being a good number two. Part of that too was understanding that being a number two to somebody meant that when he would even talk to our employees, he would roll out a new program, he would put it down, and then there would always be kind of the meetings after the meeting, right, where people would grab you in the hallway or say, hey, do you really think that's best for us, or what's the thing? And what I really liked about this CEO is he always left his ego on the shelf, and he would tell us first what these plans are, where to go, but he'd want us to basically debate them with him, or if we disagreed, go ahead and bring it up. and he didn't want any yes men. In fact, we were in one meeting where there was some new people on our executive staff, and he said, before we get started about this issue, I just want to know how everybody feels. And the two new guys kind of tried to be yes men. They tried to say what they thought he wanted them to say.
Yeah.
And he was great. He just said, okay, thank you. Okay, you guys could go back to your departments and work because I already got that opinion covered. Now, the rest of you guys that disagree with me, this is perfect. I want to debate because we've got to decide what's best for these employees. Yeah. And I don't know if my idea is the best or not. I feel like it is, but I want to hear what,
That's awesome.
And he was that type of leader.
From my standpoint, watching you over the years,
yeah,
that is, I mean, you've taught that to me 100 times and everybody we know. And you've been that for me on multiple occasions. You've, shouted me out in different meetings or different networking groups that we've been into together. And it always feels really good. And so I think when you're a big company like Associated Foods, you need your vice president to be your number two. But when you're small, having friends in the community that you've established relationships with that can brag about you, and that's a powerful concept.
It really is. And so many times we think because the guy's the owner that he's already got all the attention or the credibility he needs. We forget that even though this guy's better known than us or whatever, if we're working with them or for them, one of the best things we can do, even if they've never heard of us before, is to talk about our experience of working with them and give them credibility.
Yeah.
And it could be somebody that's very well known, but still somebody working for them that says, hey, no, I love working for him and here's why, bam, bam, bam. All that is so much more believable than anything else that comes across. So
and it's really hard to do that to yourself. You come across as arrogant.
Yeah.
And so you just don't say anything.
Right.
So to have that number two is that's a great tool.
There's so many times where, you'll kind of look out there and you kind of wish, hey, I would like to help that guy, but if I just butt in right here, I'm going to come across as cocky or I'm going to come across as a know-it-all. And you kind of wish somebody would say, hey, you know what, Steve's had some great experience with that. Hey, Steve, do you got some good advice for it? Or just a lead in like that where it won't come across as, hey, I'm trying to take over your business or I'm trying to tell you what to do or anything.
Right.
But here's some ideas, But yeah.
That's cool. So what then made the transition to become, your company's name is Our Marketing.
Yeah.
Our Marketing Department actually is full name. And so maybe talk a little bit about what you do, but maybe before that, how did you, clearly you had some skill in marketing. You were able to develop that skill and try things out at Associated Foods. And so
because of my role, I always felt that urge to continue learning, right? So whatever it was, I mean, they put me in charge of our printing presses because they said that has to do with marketing. So I didn't want to just be the leader that didn't know anything. I wanted to, so I would grab books, I'd grab, watch videos, I'd see, hey, I need to understand this if I'm going to help these guys or help lead this or help move this. And so as I was doing that, and I was vice president there for 21 years and the spokesperson, all that. And I got to the point where I loved it. I mean, it was great, but I kept doing that. I'd done that. In fact, some of here's my little bit of bragging, but it wasn't me, it was our team and everything, it was so cool. So the last 3 years I was there, the National Grocers Association would have these marketing ad awards, and they would put them in the whole country. Well, it was U.S., Canada, so Northern America, and any ads, and then they would have categories. Like this would be the best ad having to do with produce, or the best ad that has to do with case lot sale, or the best ad that has to do with a certain holiday in the country for the year. And they had 41 categories in there. And so it was so cool. I mean, I can tell you the different years, but the last 3 years were, and up to that point, they'd had hardly any, there's so many grocery chain stuff. Yeah. It wasn't like somebody would ever win more than one category. But the last 3 years, because they're independent judges, they don't know what you won. My team, we won 11, then 12, then 14 of the 41. Those last 3 years are there in the country.
That's
the
awesome.
best ads. Now, the thing that I'm so proud about is those aren't just clever, right? I mean, sometimes people win an ad because, wow, that's just a clever, funny thing or whatever. You had to be clever, but also you had to show results. What were the dollars made from that ad? What were the difference? How did that grow? And so you'd have to report that too. And so to me, I'm most proud of that because not only were they fun, were they clever, they grabbed the eyes, they worked.
Yeah.
They made the money,
right.
and
move the needle.
Yeah, but I don't want to say I was bored or tired of it because it still was a lot of fun and dealing with independents every day was a challenge because there'd be new stuff. But I got to the point where I thought, I kind of want to do more than just groceries. And I'd kind of been thinking about it for the last couple of years, but I saw an opportunity as our company was buying another chain, and we'd recently just bought Albertsons, and I thought, okay, right now they're going to pull these people together. Then, obviously, like any company, you're going to have to say, okay, we've got lots of duplication. We've got to let some people go and get this down so it runs right. And so I thought, I know when I leave here, I want to leave with as good a reputation as I can. A lot of times when you leave, even if it's by your own choice, people are mad at you for leaving, right?
Yeah.
So I had to say, okay, here's probably my very best time to have less people mad at me and let them know that I want to go. But I basically pitch it to them as a money savings. Hey, instead of letting these two guys go on these billing, this guy could take half my job, this guy could take half, we could pull this together. You don't have to pay me severance because I'm leaving on my own accord. And we're going, and I basically pitched it to them and told them that, and decided to leave. And once that was accepted and I knew I was leaving, I wanted to finish as strong as I could. So I didn't want to start working on what I'm going to do after until I'd left. And luckily I'd made enough money that I could keep that. I didn't have, I knew I could take a year off or whatever, and, and not work if I needed to, while I figured it out or whatever. So I kept that right up. And so I waited to tell a lot of the other companies we were working with that I was leaving until almost like the last week. And then as I let people know, it was funny. So some of these people that I'd sat on boards with, and credit union over here or this other company over here, they were like, "Oh my gosh, Steve, you got to come work with us. You got to come do some of this." And so they were offering me money and stuff to come work with them on little projects, which was a great feeling to be wanted by that. But I was like, oh. And so I remember the last day before they said, "You got to start working with us tomorrow." This was a credit union that was pushing me the hardest. And I said, "I don't even have a name for my company." And they said, "That's okay. We'll just tell everybody that you're our marketing department." And I thought, well, you know what? My last name starts with R. Okay, our marketing department. That's it. That's the name. We'll go.
That's a
and
great
it's just
name.
so just with a day in between, and so that's kind of how that happened, and it worked out great because we want. One of the things that we do is we love if we're working with a client, we really think our whole job is to shout their name, not ours, theirs.
Right.
So if they have an event, we want to our whole staff be there, maybe their T-shirts or their things we want to be supporting, and we don't want people to say, "Hey, this is a company we hired." We want them to say, "It's our marketing department."
Right.
They're not lying. It is our marketing department, but we work for them, right?
Yeah.
We want to be their team. We want
Great
to be
way
their,
to be that shadow player. That's huge impact.
And so that's kind of how that started. But yeah, so that was actually 2011 that I left there and started that. Again, I was going to take more time off, but got pushed and I jumped in and started helping these other
and
businesses.
Stayed busy ever since.
Yep, have.
So how? Tell me a little bit more about the business. How many employees do you have?
So right now we have 11 employees. But only 4 of those are full time.
Okay.
We have the rest of them are work from home people that do social media designers and come up with creativity and stuff like that. And so it works out really well. We social media, we don't push that a whole lot to our clients. We think we got a better strategy for doing social media, and so anybody we work with, we'd like to share that strategy. But if they've got people in house that can do it, that's just fine. We'll teach them the strategy.
Yeah.
But if they don't, then we've got people in place that can do it for them. But we're not necessarily setting ourselves up to be a social media house or anything like that. We, like I said, I feel like we do it better than anybody else, and we have things in place that make it. But again, we want to provide the strategy of how to do it, not necessarily just do it for everybody. I mean, we're willing, but if you've got your own internal people, then that might be better. Have them do it.
And correct me if I'm wrong, that's kind of a strategy you've taken on the last few years anyway, because I noticed you've done a lot of classes and courses and boot camps, and I've attended some of those, and they're phenomenal.
Yeah.
So you've kind of moved into that. Is that just because you wanted to help more people than you could take in? Or?
Yeah, and it's funny is the classes, after we do the class, I mean, we love, probably my greatest love is teaching the people the things and then watching them see how that happens, how it comes to fruition and the money made. But as we did that, we had we've had a lot of people say, "Man, thank you, Steve, for teaching me, but now will you do it for me?"
Yeah.
Because that is not where my love is, and I want to run my business over here.
Yeah.
But I'd love for you to do that. And so we kind of said, okay, we've got to have this arm that can do that for people, right? That can
Yeah.
meet with them and implement it, because I always believe that you should go with wherever your strength is. You should,
Yeah.
whatever your love is, that's where you'll be the best fit for your business, and trying to do things that you don't care for or you don't like. And so that's kind of where that started. Now we do that for a bunch of companies, and
Cool.
help them every month with the strategy, what's going to happen, where we're
Yeah.
going, and love that. That's the neat thing, because then you're over time being able to measure,
Yeah.
over years. You're able to pick, hey, here are the best weeks to do this. Here's the best weeks to do that.
Right.
All that.
You really do become an expert just
Yeah.
from time, from
Yep.
experiencing what happens.
Yeah.
So that's cool. So you talked a little bit about what motivated you to do it with the experience, but what motivates you to keep, you're 11 years now?
Yeah.
What motivates you to keep going, to keep doing it?
Like any independent business, I would love to say that every minute of it has been financially wonderful. Like any independent business out there, there's some times where the economy goes, and you're like, okay, do I have enough income coming? Do I have all that? And I gotta say that hasn't. I thought that was going to be my number one worry.
Mm-hmm.
It hasn't as much, because there's usually something we can do to create that.
Mm-hmm.
There's something we can do to create the business. But like anything else, I think my joy has been in teaching people, but then coming back and saying, okay, now how do we implement it so that we can help more people? And that doesn't happen it happens in steps, right?
Yeah.
You get this phase down, you stay here, and then you get to the point where you can do that again, but
Right.
but only a little bit. And so I don't know. That's kind of been the flow of what we've done. And then there's things that like anybody else you fall into. So I'll tell you one of the misleading things that I fell into is, as we kept going and got bigger, you see what other marketing agencies who are totally different than us and how they perform.
Yeah.
You see what they're doing, and then you have people that ask you to do it, and so sometimes you think, okay, yeah, I'll do that. Not realizing that takes you off of your focus, not that it takes you away from where you want to be, what you want to do out there, because you think you're helping them. But in reality, you go from being an expert and a strategist to being the worker who gets it done.
Right.
And that's okay if that's what you want to do. But a lot of times that takes you out of being the expert mode.
Right.
So then all of a sudden you go down this road a little ways and you realize, okay, I'm taking direction from this owner of this little business who I know is that what he's taking is probably not right, but he is convinced, and I'm doing it anyway. In the long run, am I really helping him?
Right.
Am I hurting? Because I'm not. I'm just saying, okay, yeah, we'll do it your way. We'll do it.
Right.
Would I be better to say, you know what, you can keep doing it that way, but I believe it's wrong, and if you're going to keep doing it, you need to have somebody else do it for you.
Yeah.
But here's what works. And so there's times where we've had to double check ourselves and come back and say, hey, we said we were going to do that, but that's really not who we are. That's not our specialty. That's not. And if we do it, we're going to not do as good a job, and we don't believe that's your right direction.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is challenging in marketing, because a lot of times people, they have an idea of what they want.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily a good one.
Yeah.
It's just an idea.
And it is funny, because it's, when you're in marketing and you've done all the classes, you've studied, you've gone to all those things, and you know how much learning is involved. I don't know if we're lying to ourselves or what, but we think of ourselves, okay, we're trained, we're knowledge. If this was a medical thing, I'd be considered a doctor at this point, right? And then you think, well, I wouldn't go in and tell the surgeon how to do things.
Right.
However, I all the time will have people that have zero experience, or somebody that's a young kid or whatever, say, oh no, I'll tell you what works in marketing, because I know what made me buy my iPod or whatever.
Right.
And so there's so many people that feel like they're experts because they feel like it's an opinion thing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and so you always run into that back and forth, and you kind of think, I think everybody should go with their gut, but I also think you should listen to people that have had different
years of
experiences.
experience.
Right, yeah.
And do this every day.
Yeah.
And see what actually works.
Right.
And things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's So you touched a little bit on this with the financial ups and downs.
Yeah.
Have you made more money or less money being self-employed versus being an executive vice president?
So here was the funny. I mean, this is the funny part. I don't think I've ever talked about this before, but so when I first started out, because so many people wanted my advice, I actually increased my income when I first left Associated.
Yeah.
But as time went on, I wasn't pushing it at all, and as time went on, and just through people, different business change orders and stuff like
Sure.
that started to go down. So then I had to start looking and saying, okay, where does our income come from? And that's where I did make some mistakes. I took little things I thought we could make money at that really it was too little to add up, right?
Mhm.
And too much labor.
Right.
And so I made several of those mistakes where all of a sudden I'm like, okay, it's going to be tight this month, paying everybody off. It's
Yeah.
going to be tough, And to making a switch to changing that over time to today I'm making way more money than I ever made
Good.
at Associated. Yeah, but it again.
How many years did that take? Once the initial drop started happening. And
I wish I was smarter than this, but it almost took 10 years.
Yeah.
To get to there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I would say that that's probably
Yeah.
more normal than we
Yeah.
both realize.
Right.
Because the more I talk to business owners, I'm like,
yeah,
this was not an overnight success. Overnight success over 10 years.
yeah, right, yeah,
So,
yeah. And like anything else, you make wrong changes, you make right
Yeah.
changes, and you come back and do it. But yeah,
Well, you-
but yeah,
well, you always have to adjust and,
yeah.
pivot when you need to and make
Right.
changes and adjustments. So, okay, so what's been the hardest thing and the best thing in your 11 years in business?
The hardest thing for me, and it's different, and I don't know why this is hardest for me. I truly don't. Is the difference between delegating when I was at corporate and delegating when I'm the owner.
Oh,
I had no idea that that'd be different.
Yeah.
I was fairly good at delegating in the corporate, and in being an owner, I don't know why, but I have a harder time putting stuff on people where I feel like, boy, that's going to be tough for them to complete. Maybe I should just do it on Saturday, and I don't know why that. I mean, I've always
I
asked
have it
myself,
too.
but and little things that I know that I shouldn't be spending my time on, that I should. These people I've hired that are great, if I just would give it to them, they might mess it up the very first time, but guess what? They'd learn from that the second, third time. They'd probably do it better than I did it.
Right, right.
But I've had a hard time putting everything over there.
Do you think that's because there was a built-in hierarchy when you worked for Associated? Like it was a corporate, they were employees.
Yeah,
that
and
hierarchy was already there. And
maybe
you
that's
have to
it.
create it.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Is hey, you got to live up to their standard. You got to live up to their standards. I'm just supervising.
Right.
Whereas
I also work here, but I'm part of the hierarchy.
right, yeah,
So, yeah,
So-
that's interesting.
But that, yeah, and I don't know. That one was. I mean, it's still hard for me today. Luckily, I've got great staff now who will actually ask me and tell me. They say, Steve, you shouldn't be doing that. We should be doing that. Now, give it to us.
Yeah.
Tell us how it needs to be done.
Yeah,
And,
good.
Yeah,
Good
but
helpers.
yeah, there's so many years
Cool.
where I would meet with people and do stuff throughout the week, and then Saturday and Sundays and late nights, I was in doing administrative work and doing stuff that I shouldn't have been doing.
Yeah,
But yeah, there's stuff I just couldn't,
yeah.
for whatever reason, delegate at the time.
So what's been the best then?
Still the best is, I mean, there are times where I've been with people, and I mean, I'm giving you the desperate, but there's been guys who have like, Steve, if I don't make this number this month, I don't know what I'm gonna. I'll probably have to close my business down, and my wife's probably fed up with me, and ready to go. And then to sit down and show them with planning and strategy, then all of a sudden they make an extra $100, and they are just elated. 2 years down the road, they're making $5,000 more a month than that. But still, that first 100, the first 200, or first where they're on this dive, and then they see the way out, they see the light, and you're helping teaching them so that it's not like just something you're doing for them, but they're seeing it so that they can repeat it.
Yeah,
I got it. That's the most rewarding, and
that's cool.
there's so many times, you get tears in your eyes because they made an extra $100.
Yeah.
I mean, you got another guy in the room who just made an extra 100,000, but
Right.
but this $100 meant
Means
so
more.
much. Yeah,
That's cool.
that's probably the very best to me, and I love
bet.
that.
Yeah, I'll bet that's pretty rewarding. Well, I really appreciate you sharing your startup story with everybody. That's pretty cool. I've known a lot of that, but actually
Right.
heard some new stuff today too.
Did you?
So
Yeah.
it's pretty cool to. I didn't know you. I didn't realize that you'd started off like at the very bottom at a grocery store and moved your way out. I knew you'd started really young at Associated Foods, but I didn't realize the background. So that's pretty cool. But that's a great story. So thanks for sharing that with everybody. So next, we're going to talk marketing because that is your expertise, and that's the original reason I wanted to have you come out and be on the podcast because I'm working on developing. You know, I wrote a little booklet a few years ago, and I just started saying, okay, I want to teach my clients how to be better marketers, even if it's not with me, like even if it's just get better results, because a lot of times, like you were talking about, if it didn't go well, they blame you, and you know, they people would advertise in my magazine and wouldn't get results, and they'd be like, "Your magazine's terrible." And at first, I honestly felt a little bit like they were right. Like I felt like my son in his interview, he talked about imposter syndrome, being a 20-year-old kid, you know, having their business, and I felt that imposter syndrome because I'm like, man, we work super hard making these magazines, but maybe nobody reads them, so maybe they're right. And what I started to realize was, then I talk to the next person and they'd be like, you're my best source. You're the best source I have of all the advertising I do. Your magazines produce the best. And I was like, wait, there's a disconnect here somewhere. Something's happening. And so I started working on developing how to help them make better ads for our magazine. And then the next natural step was from there was realizing that the best advertisers do multiple things. They're not just doing a magazine, or they're not just doing social media. They had a plan. And so anyway, that's kind of the whole point of this part of the podcast, is to say, okay, bring in some experts that have other expertise, because the whole point of this is not just to help sell ads in my magazine or anything. I want to help people with real local businesses do better at marketing. Because I go online and I look up marketing. I don't know if you've done this. You go on YouTube and you're like, best ways to market, or you go on Google and do that. And it seems like it's just overwhelmingly internet-based businesses that are, you know, that's the kind of idea behind all the marketing knowledge that's out there. I know that that's not true, but it drives me a little crazy because I'm like, if you're, you know, a local, you know, Rockwood Optometry right here in North Ogden, none of that stuff applies to them. Very little. Some of it might be conceptually something that they could do. But for the real local, real businesses, mom and pop places that are like you and me, we live and work in our community, you know,